Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in your body exploding at the speed of light.
Total protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal.
Protonic reversal with your host, Conan Neutron. Broadcasting from a secret underground lair in Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
A gigantic middle finger to everything that is rotten about music, rock and roll, and corporate power.
The thing is, though, if you don't laugh, you're going to go on a killing spree with sharpened nails.
Confidence of a hero or a fool. I wasn't exactly certain which.
Could not be more professional.
It's only one I choose to devote my life to. That's okay.
It means something. It means something.
And they got away.
You know, that's my take on it. What's yours?
Protonic reversal.
That's like a science thing, right?
Indeed it is. It is a science thing. It is a science place. It is a scientific fact that we're all up in your faces. Time once again for the one, the only Protonic Reversal. That's right. I'm sitting here with Mr. Bob Bert. And I'm very excited to have him back. Hey, Bob. How you doing?
Good.
I forgot to take you off the screen for the spiel, so I'm just going to do it while you're here. Let's not make it weird, okay? But welcome to Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. I'm your host, Conan Neutron. I'm a rock and roll lifer that's been touring and recording for 24-plus years. I play in bands, most known for the band Conan Neutron, The Secret Friends. Music is a huge part of my life, and use the format of this very long-running podcast to talk about music with musicians whose work I enjoy and respect, but who may not be household names. This is episode 399. Incredible. If this is your first time listening to the show, archives are available for free. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding at protonicreversal.com. However, if you want to support the show and get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/protonicreversal will gladly achieve that goal. And if you like the show and even just a single episode, please feel free to like, subscribe on your platform of choice, share it around the internet, or even just leave a review. All that helps people discover the show, beats back the almighty algorithmic overlords, and it's just a darn nice thing to do. Okay, so Bob Bert, Bad Mood Rising Sonic Youth, Pussy Galore, which, by the way, the streaming services do not like you to write Pussy Galore. They think you're talking about something else. They put that in the title. Jon Spencer and the Hitmakers, Chrome Cranks, Wolfmanhattan Project. Bob, welcome back to the show. You didn't even have the book written last time we had like a full, well, it may have been written, but it wasn't out.
Well, it's funny because back then, I don't remember when it was, but I had so much going on, I think. Maybe not. And so, yeah, since then, the book came out and is out of print.
It's out of print.
And, you know, my 11 years of touring with Lydia Lunch is over. And 221 shows with Jon Spencer and the Hitmakers are over. But I don't know what you're saying. I'm not a household name.
It's usually may or may not, but I was trying to rush through it because I'm already out of sorts a little bit. 6 years ago. It was 6 years ago. Was the last time you were on. And I remember because Hitmakers was still a rather new thing at the time. Like I had seen maybe the third or fourth show in Madison at High Noon. And then it was brand new. So that band did a lot. That was, you know, Sam, Sword, John. There was a lot happening. Did it just run out of steam, or what was the
well, you know, basically it was great, but it's just like I had already given my notice. As much as it was great to travel the world again and play, I mean, just the way that band worked, I wasn't like a big fan of because the members were always spread out all over the world. Right. So it was always like, you know, 2 12-hour days of rehearsal before a tour, that kind of thing. And I don't like to work like that. But anyway, you know, once the groove got going, it was awesome. And I, you know, there's that guy, Pop Catastrophe, that chronicles every Jon Spencer thing. Yeah. So he keeps track. So it's like, I could honestly say that I played 221 shows with the Hitmakers. And then I had given my notice because it was just too much. Some of the things that the way he works, I just don't like. And And one of the ways I don't like the way he works is that he really tries to get the most and save money. So, I mean, I don't like the idea, especially at my age, of like flying overnight to Europe and then playing a show like as soon as you get there.
Yeah.
And he does things like that. There was never really any minutes to breathe, which is, once you get going and you're on tour, that's fine because, most of the time is boring anyway. But anyway, I had given my notice saying that I would finish promoting that record. And then all of a sudden, Quasi got back and they just started, they put out a new album and then so that kind of killed it. And then there was all this, I don't even want to get into it, but there was all this weird stuff going on in other people's lives. But yeah, it was good. But
well, I mean, it's a good run. I mean, Wire's 154 record was the number of shows that they had played at that time, and that was their third record, and it was Wire. So it's like that's a pretty good accomplishment.
My whole career with Sonic Youth, I played 90 shows,
right,
over like 4 or 5 years, and so
amazing.
To do like that many shows with Jon, and he was just constantly booking tours.
Yeah,
and we gave Jon a 3-week notice, a 3-week deadline, and so every tour we did was like 21 shows,
right? Just maxing
maxing it out, and so but then Quasi got back together,
and they really started hitting it hard too. So
they started hitting it hard, and they've been together for 15 years at least, maybe longer than that. They've been together a long time, and it's just kind of like that's Sam's thing. He writes the songs, and it's so much simpler. 2 people, and him and Janet, and they definitely are more popular on the touring set than Jon Spencer is.
I mean, they have people especially are for a few of their records are incredibly passionate about that band. I love that band. I had Sam on the show before Hitmakers were even a thing. I was like, loving her out with that guy. But I think it was really, it was notable and cool that you guys did come together at all in that formation, because it was definitely like, oh, here are these awesome musicians that I think of as coming from not different worlds, but certainly different parts of the musical world, and everybody came together to make something that it's kind of like the thing that you hope that it's going to be, but it's kind of something totally new as well. And I thought that was really
it was
cool.
Very unique. I kind of, think it's the best thing Jon's done since Pussy Galore. That's my biased opinion. But,
you're a little bit biased, sure.
But
I would agree with you there. I mean, even it being a final form, Jon Spencer, okay, yeah, here's kind of looking through the back catalog and reimagining some songs, kind of like it all worked really well together.
It did. And the shows were really good. I mean, it's, big cities were always good, but once we got away into the weird places, it was just like some nights were like, why are we doing this? There's 10 people here and whatever, but it happened. It's done.
Well, and that'll
glad
let you
I did it, but it was weird, working with someone that I worked with when he was like 20 years old,
right,
and now working with him in his mid 50s or late 50s, and I mean, there's a lot of things about him that never changed, and there are some things that have, and it was just kind of weird,
Yeah, because that's something I do want to talk about, because the idea of having that long plane between people, and you're different people, but are you? In some ways, yes. In some ways, not so much, and that can kind of be like, oh yeah, this, and then I go, oh yeah, this, maybe sometime in the same minute sometimes. But things never seem acrimonious or anything, and I like the idea of it being, oh, there's regular drums and then all the Bob Bert stuff, all the junk percussion, although
but the thing is, and that was cool and that was awesome, but it's just like, the thing is like Jon Spencer's audience is 95% from the Blues Explosion.
Sure.
So doing all these shows every single night, at least 2 or 3 people would come up to me after the show and say, "Hey, where did you get that idea of playing this metal drum kit?" And I was just like, "Oh God," And it was always kind of like, we would play Pussy Galore songs, and they would get the same response as the rest of the songs. As soon as we hit those first 2 notes of bell bottoms, the crowd just goes, "Ah!"
I can tell you there were 2 people that were very excited when you played the first Pussy Galore song I heard you play, and it was me and Dale Crover. We were both like, "Oh, awesome." So there were some people, but I agree. The vast majority were like.
I was hanging out with Dale recently. I went to 2 of the Red Cross shows that he also did solo stuff for.
So
and just Sunday night, I went to see King Dunn.
Oh, Buzz and Trevor. Yeah. Oh, how cool was that with Trevor doing all the kind of like melodic counterpoint? Like,
I was really blown away. I thought it was great.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed Pincus too. He was great too.
That was
In fact, they're playing again tonight. I was going to go, and I said, "Oh shit, I got to do this on interview with you."
Got to talk to Conan.
You're saving me a trip to Brooklyn.
There you go. It's okay because at least you got to see him once. That was a great tour. I really enjoyed that. And even
there's like 70 shows they're doing.
yeah, it's no joke for sure. And I had actually never seen Pincus do a banjo set. Either, and I thought that was really cool. And he had the 2. Did he have the big pairs? He was projecting
the big pairs with the projections. It was kind of reminded me of that artist Tony Ausler. The projections.
Yeah, I asked him. I was like, "Hey, has anyone ever tried to buy those pairs off you?" He's like, "No." Hey man, how much for the pairs? No, but so Hitmakers, hit it hard, and it was interesting in the fact that I think that if we had been in a different media landscape, I think it might have been a bigger deal for people. I hate to phrase it that way, but I mean, it's a big deal to nerds like me, right? Which is great, but can you build a latter-day career on nerds like me? Probably not. Sorry.
Well, I mean, he has his fans, and we did a lot of interesting things. I got, like because of the Hitmakers, I went to Japan for the second time, which I've only ever done that with Pussy Galore. So it was John who was responsible for both times that I went to Japan. And so it was worth it just for that.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And we played we played these 2 festivals in Europe that were sponsored by Rolling Stone.
Yeah.
Where we were sandwiched in between Mark Lanigan and Teenage Fan Club.
Oh wow!
And we were playing to like 4,000 people and stuff. That was cool.
That's nice. That's a lovely thing. I love to hear that. And I saw you guys did that crazy Harley thing in Milwaukee with
that was funny too.
With the Brammers, which was like I think we're the only 4 people that like know who this band is, but everyone else is like, "Yeah, man, sounds good. Throw me a beer."
There's like a Leonard Skinner cover band like 2 stages over that are like have like 5 times as many people.
Yeah. It was a weird scene, but I was glad to be able to see you again. And we were always like, "This is really weird." No, it was an awesome band. I'm glad of it. I got to see it a few times. It's something I know we didn't talk about last time. It's not gonna be what you think. BBGun.
Yes,
I love that zine.
Thank you.
So I have done at least 4 or 5 cullings of physical zines. I've got a tub of them, and it's like, okay, do I really need this? Do I really need that? But I've saved every copy of BBGun that I've ever had. So always has made the cut. Can you tell me about how BBGun came about?
Well, it was the 90s. We just started to start using a computer. And I don't know. I wanted to do something with my wife, and when we came up with the idea, and it was the same concept. I've been a magazine junkie.
Yeah.
I used to like walk a mile to a store to buy the next issue of Rock Scene. When I was a kid, and I just like I remember when Warhol started interviewing, he's like, "Yeah, let's start a magazine. We'll get invited to parties and we get all this free stuff." And it's true,
Warhol.
And it was also the fact that I was involved in music that I knew half the people I was interviewing. Yeah. And I got, way more personal stuff. You know, it's just like talking to Elliott Smith about his acid trips and asking Nancy Sinatra if she ever had sex with Elvis Presley, and you know, and like, you know, sitting down in Europe with, you know, Fred Cole for hours, and it was great. And my wife kind of was responsible for the layout and doing getting the advertising. And we tried to, you know, our original concept was to do one a year, and we ended up doing 7 issues over probably 10 years or something. But
very high quality though, so
yeah,
it's better to have stuff that's high quality.
Well, the first issue was total like cut and paste.
Yeah,
and then, you know, as we went along, it got slicker and slicker, and then, you know, and it picked up steam, because by the time we did the one with the number 6, I believe, with Vincent Gallo on the cover.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that one was the best-selling issue.
Right.
And we had to like reprint it, and you know, and then of course, you know, dealing with him was a whole world in itself. But
what a handful, right?
Yeah. I was telling someone this story the other day. So, you know, I meet Gallo and I give him a magazine and I ask him, you know, if I could do the thing. And of course, if you interview Vincent Gallo, he has to be on the cover.
Right.
That's part of the deal.
That's his whole deal.
So we're getting ready to do the interview, and he goes, "Oh, well, I'm going to get my photographer." And I said to him, I said, "Well, you know, I can get like, you know, Richard Kern or Michael Levine to do it."
Yeah.
And he was like, "Okay, yeah, let's get Richard Kern to do it." So, you know, Richard Kern comes to the interview, takes photos, takes all these, walking around, takes all these great photos. And I say to Vincent, I said, "Okay, well, I'll show you the contact sheets and you pick out what picture you want on the cover."
Right.
And he goes, "Oh no, I trust you guys. I trust you. I trust you." So, you know, we put the magazine out with the cover, and I mail him 25 copies, and I don't hear anything from him.
Yeah.
And so finally, you know, weeks go by. Finally, I write him an email. I'm like, "Hey, Vince, did you ever get the magazines I sent you?" And he was just like, he writes back one sentence: "Did you have to use the worst possible photo of me on the cover?" You know. And so when we went into a second, and all the issues of BBGun, there was only 2 people I let edit their interviews because I didn't want to get any trouble.
Yeah.
One was him, and the other one was Richard Hell. And, you know, and so, yeah, it was kind of crazy. So he like gives me all this shit for the cover, and then he takes the magazines that I sent him and signs them and puts them on his website for like $100 a piece.
So he can sell them along with his sperm.
Yeah.
What a guy. Fantastic. I mean, no, I always felt that it was a very high quality zine. And again, the familiarity that you had with the subjects coming from someone like being in a similar place, someone that played music and that toured and that lived that life, you get a different kind of conversation. And it occurred to me that one of my regrets in not talking about it with you, honestly, even when you run for the brief 10-year anniversary episode appearance, it's something I thought about when I made this show.
Yeah.
That it is different. You get a different level of comfort, and you end up speaking about different things. You know, so sometimes sillier stuff, maybe, sure. But you get something that is unique and cool, and you get a window into a world that people otherwise wouldn't get into. Because I remember the time being like finding out, I was like, "Oh yeah, there's a zine BBGun," and like whatever. It's at the time I didn't know who did what or anything. And then I was like, "Oh, Bob Bert, that's like the guy from Sonic Youth." Ah, that's funny. I was like, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it is the guy from Sonic Youth." I'm like, "He has a zine?
Yeah.
Isn't he busy like drumming in some band? Like what's like that's crazy." And
Well,
so
that was great because I sold them on tours. You know, mostly I think you know, Chrome Cranks and Knoxville Girls were the main part of the time that I was doing BBGun. And you know, back then they were so great. You had this great store called See Here in New York that sold magazines and zines, all kinds. And you know, I got accepted in Tower, and you know, I mean, and
where
so
I used to work.
Yeah, and so yeah, so I mean, by the time we did the last issue with Genesis Peorage on the cover, you know, we figured, oh, you know, Vincent Gallo sold so well, so we did 5,000 of that one, and you know, we got rid of 90% of them, but I had boxes of them for a while.
Well, and again, it seems silly now that we're in this era where, you know, people are doing everything, like, you know, they're on Instagram giving, like, you know, whatever. David Lynch is doing weather reports, right? I mean, like, it's sort of like there's all these different ideas. But at the time that I first discovered it, it was like kind of, it was interesting to me that someone would participate in something as a creative exercise that way. And again, it's something that I thought about when starting this show, which really just started as like, hey, I want something I can do when I'm not recording or playing music, which is often too often for my life.
It was a labor of love, and then a lot of it, you know, made it into the book. And I keep talking to Todd Novak over at Hozak, and he keeps saying he, like, you know, last year he said he was going to reprint it this year. Last year, and now this year, you know, he keeps putting out all these amazing books one after the other. And he's supposed to, you know, print up a third printing of my book, which would have added stuff to it. And I really hope that happens. And it's just, you know, especially as time goes on, I think of all the people that are in my book and that were in my fanzine that are no longer with us, you know, like Fred Cole, Kim Shattuck, Steve Albini, you know, half the people I interviewed are now gone, and so
it's documentation.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and that's so important because we don't get like the kind of people from this cultural movement aren't in the Smithsonian. Usually, you know, maybe once in a while, but it's
well, you get your little things like, just, you know, about 2 or 3 weeks before Steve Albini died, people were sending me photos that he had my book in his recording studio.
Yeah. No, I saw it.
Yeah. Which made me really happy. And
that reminded me that I need to
going back to the fanzine, you know, I went to see this Primal Scream show in Asbury Park, and someone said, "Oh, you want to go meet Bobby Gillespie?"
Yeah.
And, you know, we know of each other, but I never really met him before. And, you know, I started talking to him. And he told me, he goes, "I have every issue of BBGun," and that like blew my mind. Like this, you know, rock star.
Yeah, but it has a reach. It's exactly the kind of thing that would appeal to someone with that sensibility. Because again, one would hope most people that play music are also fans of music. I mean, one would hope, of course, right? So and it gives you a different perspective.
I was a fan before I was a musician. I became a musician accidentally. So
right. Yeah. So, and by the way, I would love to. I did not pick up a copy of the book in the first pressing, so I would love it if and when there is a next pressing,
or the second,
yeah, or the second. I don't know why. I swore that I did, and I didn't. I went and looked. I'm like, oh, I better check that. I was like, oh, I never actually pushed the button. Whoops, my bad. So that's another sale for the next pressing.
Yeah, well, you should write the Hozak and say, really waiting.
we'll put on a public pressure campaign from the show. So no, but I think that there's something to be said for being a part of a creative movement, but then also having the forethought to engage with it in that way. And again, Fred's sketches, moments in time, snapshots in history, whatever you want to call it, that you know, it may not even seem like you're doing something too important right then, but then like later on down the line, it can be huge.
Oh, yeah, of course. You know, I mean, you know, I tell pretty much every interview and podcast that I do, and people are talking to me about, you know, like, you know, I would have never in my wildest dreams imagined people would still be talking about Sonic Youth in 2024. that blows my mind. And the you know, I started off there, and you know, Bad Moon Rising is the first album I ever recorded. Yeah. And it's still selling. It's still people writing articles about it. I'm still getting money from it. You know, I played on 30 records since then, and that was the very first one. So it's just like, it's kind of weird.
Well, and it's still, there's a new audience that finds it every year too.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And it is, even amongst the Sonic Youth catalog, like it does kind of stand alone as a unique thing. Like
it does.
It's almost a one album era.
Yeah. It's kind of funny, and every once in a while I hang out with Steve Shelley, and he's told me this more than once, that his sister's favorite Sonic Youth album is Bad Moon Rising.
Wow. That's the kind of backhanded compliment that only a relative can give. I love that. That's great. No, but it's, just from a perspective of how the band was developing at the time, and it being like, whatever, it's like 85, and there's all this, the references to kind of, Manson's, satanic panic, like all this kind of stuff that's in there. Like it instead of feeling dated, it actually feels sort of not of any time because of it. And
and it has a very ethereal kind of feel to it. And, I read somewhere, someone said one time, I don't think this is true, but someone said that, My Bloody Valentine's Loveless wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Bad Moon Rising.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. No,
I've talked to Kevin, and I know he's a fan, and he was also, My Bloody Valentine and the Jesus and Mary chain were really into Pussy Galore, and but I don't know if that's true or not, but I always thought, wow, if it is, that's pretty cool.
Well, because because there's almost like this oncoming wave of coming at
Space
you effect, right? Yeah, exactly. And it's like here comes the bulldozer, like whatever you want to describe it. And that can be something where rather than trying to evoke a specific tone or sound or songwriting, it's like, oh, let's get that kind of feel. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's sort of like I always refer to, Velvet Underground Sunday Morning. It's like that is the thing that it is, and it's the perfect song to listen to on a Sunday morning.
Sure.
And it sits with all these other songs that like wouldn't.
Bad Moon Rising, the perfect album to listen to when you're on acid and
maybe involved with some nefarious characters in the desert. Sure, I mean, yeah. No, but and there's something to be said for that, and I think that it's a super interesting record. Like I had BC on the show like last year or sometime. I'm trying to remember exactly. And I ended up it was in New York for a non-music related thing for once, and he was like, "Oh, you want us to come by the studio?" I'm like, "Yeah," which we more or less just BS for a couple hours. Like that's the sum totality of it. But I was blown away by like seeing his space and just being like, "Oh yeah, all these great records were like made here. Like this is like." This guy was,
and it was a whole different place back then. I mean, not the studio so much as the neighborhood. When we went to record it there, I didn't even know of the word Gowanus. It was just like Brooklyn.
Like, where's
and
that?
We go there. There were packs of wild dogs running around. And it was kind of dangerous and crazy. And now there's a Whole Foods and everything else.
Right. It's gentrified as hell, like everything.
But it's great that Martin's still there, still doing it.
Yeah, pride to go honest, man. He's he is up in it, and it's beautiful to see. It's awesome. He's a great dude. What are your? Yeah, I mean, you probably didn't expect to be talking about that record like this many years later, but it does. It's a fascinating record.
And people are digging it. People always come up to me. Oh, that's my favorite Sonic Youth record. Yeah. And I always think, well, if you ran into Steve, maybe you wouldn't say that.
Exactly. I remember because I went backwards a little bit. I think Evil was the first one I listened to, but I weirdly I did hear Death Valley 69. I think I heard the single first, and then kind of went back to it. And that's another one that's like in the classic, just kind of, if that song didn't exist, it would need to be invented model, right? And of course, that one is with Lydia as well. And that's it's such a cool kind of Martin Luther hammering the statement up on the church door. kind of
it was such a thrill for me because I was such a fan of Lydia's before I even joined Sonic Youth, and And I met her at the very first show I played with them in 1982. And then, we've been friends ever since. And then I ended up playing in Retrovirus, which is, full circle.
Yeah, and that was another example too when I saw Retrovirus in Minneapolis at Tom's thing, where I was like, oh, this is a great kind of like final form Lydia Lunch thing, because you got a little bit of everything, right? You got like some of the best 8-Eyed Spy stuff. You got some of the all of like these snippets of the entire catalog,
But it was a retrospect.
I guess Weasel had a lot to do with that. He was he was the one pushing for it.
Lydia. I've been in contact with Lydia. We were talking about other musical stuff, but then it was like right after my wife had died, and then all of a sudden I get a call from Lydia telling me she wants to do this retrospect, and she already had Algis on board, the bass player.
Yeah,
and she wanted to have a good. We were trying to figure out who to get for a guitar player. We were asking everybody. She really wanted Paul Leary, and he didn't want to do it. And
yeah, good luck getting him out of the house.
That's exactly what he said. And it's
that man's a homebody.
This is where I'll get sidetracked a little bit. So Paul told Lydia that he didn't want to do it. All he wanted to do was go from his couch to the mailbox to get his royalty checks. And
still one of my favorite guitar players, of course. But,
yeah, totally, no doubt about it.
But yeah, I've heard many tales of how that is.
But yeah, so we went through a bunch of people. I mentioned it to Nick Zinner, and I said to Lydia, let me ask Nick Zinner. And Lydia's like, okay, but I hate the yes.
Classic Lydia, yeah. All right.
Yeah. And so then one day she just calls me up. The search is over. Weasel Walter's in, and we found him. And then so we did a few tours at the beginning, and then then she calls me up one day. She's like, I'm getting rid of Algis and I want Tim Dahl. You have a problem? I'm like, you're the boss. What are you asking me for?
Yeah, sure.
And so then once Tim joined, it was just like full speed ahead, because he's like amazing.
Oh yeah, he's a powerhouse, and it's interesting too, because most people think of Weasel as a drummer, because he's a really fantastic drummer, but I'm a big fan of that Lake of Dracula record. I think his guitar stuff that's like super cool. Like the guy's he's a powerhouse. Like he's a very creative dude.
Yes,
and it just occurred to me when seeing that lineup, I was like, wow, this is fantastic. This is like a really cool band. Like even if I hadn't had this rich history of knowing all these bands, and knowing this legacy, I'd be like, this rules. This is. It
was great. I really enjoyed it. We had so much fun, and she brought us places that I've never been before. I'd never been to Australia. I went there 4 times with her. We went to Colombia, Sao Paulo. We actually played in Moscow.
Wow.
Just all these, all, of course, all the usual places, but
you played Moscow and you got back out again, which is
we did, and it was an experience I'll never forget.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm sure they were deeply appreciative that you were playing, but it's a little fraught.
Yeah.
A little fraught. So let's backtrack a bit. Tell me, I don't think we talked about Action Swingers last time. Maybe we did.
I might have said that we couldn't.
Yeah, you don't have to. You've done it.
Ask what you want to ask, and I'll answer it.
Okay, so that's a band sort of mired in mystery for many people that come from the West Coast, such as myself, and I think that it's a real interesting outfit. You have a interesting alchemy of people put together, and it seemed tumultuous. Is the best way to put it. So
Yes.
what all went down with Action Swingers? Because I
All right,
think
so
that-
all right, so it starts off. I get this phone call from Thurston, and he goes, "Oh, me and Julie K. Fritz are playing with this guy Ned in the Action Swingers tonight at CBGB's, and do you want to play drums?" So I said, I wasn't going to pass up playing with Thurston and Julie, two ex-bandmates, and so I said, yeah. So I went there and I learned the songs during the sound check, and it was loose and crazy, but most of his songs kind of sound similar, but so that's how it started. And then Ned has a very I don't want to say anything bad because it'll come back to bite me in the ass, but he's got a very bitter kind of negative personality. And so first, right off the bat, he alienates Thurston. And so then we had Pete Shore from the Unsane playing bass,
right,
and we made that first record, and then there was fighting between Ned and Julie, and then Ned with Pete, and so then we were going to England. He had a tour booked to England, and this is like right when grunge was kind of starting, and
right.
And actually, Everett True wrote this article about the Action Swingers, which was just an interview with Ned, and it was just Ned saying like stupid stuff like what about that drummer from Mudhoney? Somebody should slap it. He was just like insulting everybody,
Like
and
being contentious, yeah.
So we put this band together, which was me and Ned, and then we got Howie Pyro on bass and Bruce Bennett from the A-Bones on guitar. And we did this tour of England, and it was kind of done with Gary Walker from Ouija Records at the time. And so, it was crazy because, we were getting good crowds, but he was just, he was like, he smoked so much hash and drank so many Newcastle brown ales, and he would like, there was one show. We're playing some show in some town in England, and it's like packed show. The promoter is this older guy. He brings the band home to eat dinner with his family, and then we go back, and we're supposed to sleep at this guy's house. And we play the show. It's packed. It's late in the morning, and Ned asked the promoter if he could have one more bottle of Newcastle brown ale. And the promoter says no. So Ned punches him in the face. So
That's tough.
And so he would cause scenes like that, but then the next day he'd just wake up and like, I'm the king of grunge and blah blah blah. It's just like,
Right, yeah.
So he was a very hard personality to deal with, and
well, and it's almost
I stuck with him longer than anyone.
Yeah.
Because he would alienate everybody. After we came back from England, we opened for the Ramones up in Columbia University in 1992.
Nice.
And that was the last show that I played with the Action Swingers and Bruce and Howie. And then he continued on after that with other people. And then he just kept showing up and on Facebook and insulting me and writing all this crazy shit. And it's just kind of like, he's one of those people that I just, probably the only one actually, because I get along with everybody, that I have him totally blocked and I haven't heard anything about him in years. So, I know he lives up in Largemont or somewhere, and he has a daughter who's probably in her 20s by now.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah.
They'll let anybody do that now, I guess.
But that was the Action Swingers. And it was also like a weird time because I had come out of the 80s, where the first half of the 80s,
Right.
I was in Sonic Youth, and the second half of the 80s, I was in Pussy Galore.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden that all ends. So now I'm in the shadows of Sonic Youth, who getting more and more popular every day. I had my own band, Bewitched.
Yeah.
And and then I was playing with the Action Swingers, and then yeah. So then Sonic Youth did their first big tour when they were on Geffen.
That was the Goo tour. Didn't Bewitched played that tour, right?
Yeah, the first half of it.
Yeah.
Then we got kicked off for some band called Nirvana.
some band no one's heard of. Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and then Chrome Cranks kind of came along.
Yeah,
right.
Then the Chrome Cranks came along, and I was in the Chrome Cranks for at least 7 years, I think. And we went to Europe all the time, and then the Chrome Cranks fell apart, and the Knoxville Girls kind of formed out of the ashes of the Chrome Cranks.
Yeah, and I think it was on air. I talked to the kid about that when he was on the show. I mean, I talked to him about a lot of stuff. Played a lot of music, but yeah, that's a band that I feel like most people that should know maybe don't know, and maybe it's just because it was kind of short lived. I don't know.
Well, we made 2 albums on In the Red, and we had a good time, and then we were supposed to play this garage festival in Las Vegas and play LA, and then 9/11 happened. Our flights were like a week or 2 later. No one wanted to get on an airplane.
Yeah.
And then the band kind of fell apart. I always tell this because it's kind of weird that like both the Chrome Cranks and the Knoxville Girls played their last show opening for Dead Moon, not knowing it was going to be their last show.
Oh, wow. That's wild. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, it's like a monkey's paw situation. Well, you can play with Dead Moon. Great. But it's your last show. Monkey. Exactly. Yeah, so I think that's cool. So I want to get into the Wolfmanhattan Project stuff. When did you meet Mick Collins?
I met Mick Collins. When the Dirt Bombs were in full swing, it seemed like they played at Maxwell's like twice a year or something.
Right. Yeah.
At least they were always touring. And so I met him then. And then I was at a party and someone said, "Oh, Mick's coming." I was like, "Oh, really?" I'm like, "What's he do?" They said, "Oh, he lives in Brooklyn now." So yeah, once I knew he lived in Brooklyn, and we became friends. And I actually, it's weird because I'm really close friends with his ex-girlfriend, who he still lives with. And
oh, wow.
I mean, they're. It's weird that they're not a couple because they are kind of a couple in so many ways. But anyway, I'm close, and just recently, like in June on my birthday, I drove them down to Asbury Park for the day. But so at one point, Mick was playing something with Kid Congo somewhere. I think it was at the Brooklyn Bowl or something like that.
Yeah.
And after my wife died, I went out to LA, and I just hung out there for 12 days or something, and just to be somewhere different. And I was hanging out with Larry Hardy, and it was and Mick was calling up Larry because he was all upset about, at the time, him and his girlfriend were breaking up. And meanwhile, there had been talk about like him and Kid recording together, and I'm like, "Larry, I want in on that."
Yeah, sounds good. Like, let's go.
Count me in. And that's how it happened. Like, Larry just said to Mick, "Oh, Bob wants to play with you." He's like, "Oh yeah, okay." So we went and we recorded that first 7-inch, and then we played some shows, and it's difficult because everyone had different schedules, and so I mean, we've been together now 12 years, and we played maybe 10 shows all locally.
Right. Yeah.
Like Kid would come in to record, and then we'd book a couple shows, and just recently we were offered a New Year's show for this year, but we couldn't do it for some reason. I think Mick couldn't do it, but yeah. So I mean, I don't know what the future of it is. I mean, Kid seems to be on a fucking train. He's like in Europe now. He played with Mudhoney last night.
Yeah.
So and also the Gories are picking up steam.
I was gonna say, and he's not the only one. Yeah, Mick's busy with the Gories.
So now it's me sitting around doing nothing.
Well, I mean, you did play that solo show with when we did the 10-year show. You had just played that like the night before or something.
Yeah, I did 3 solo shows.
How was that?
I recorded what I was doing. I mean, it's got a long way to go. It's just a work in progress, and it's not something I'm really gung-ho about, but it's just something to do because, it's just got to keep busy, and it's kind of fun. But every time I do a gig, it's like I got to pull everything off the shelves,
right?
Set everything up and rehearse for a few days, and it's just like I've been playing these little places where they, pass the hat around, so it's definitely not profitable, but that's who cares about that. But
you're doing it because you're a musician. You want to play music,
Yeah,
makes sense.
It's a weird setup, it's kind of fun. It went over. The only reason I did it more than once is because the first time I did it, it went over so well.
Yeah,
and someone offered me another show, and then another show, and then I had a show, and then I got COVID again. Had to cancel that one.
Yeah, that's still around.
It's back bigger than ever.
Can you tell me a bit about the Between the Times and the Tides record with Lee? Like how did that all come to pass?
Me and Lee are good friends, and we both have. I love Lee. He has a practice space and an archive space in the same factory building in Hoboken. So we get together every once in a while and shoot the shit, and we're really in touch with each other. And when he was making that record and he was recording it in the same building, I just jokingly said, like, hey, you want some congas? Because I had this set of congas. And he said, yeah. So I went in and played it. And, I might have played a couple songs. I don't even remember.
Yeah, and it seems like he's kind of a very creative and inclusive, freewheeling kind of dude. So why not, right? Fit the record.
He's awesome.
Do you think that I feel like there's a lot of obviously Kim's ran around with her band. That's great. Like it's awesome. Like to me, it sounds like I was like, oh, this sounds like Dead Rider or something. Like this is like
who's this?
Kim Gordon.
Oh yeah.
Like
she's on top of the world right now. She's
killing it.
Yeah, she's killing it. And in fact, Lee went to see her play when she was in Brooklyn. I didn't go, but Lee went and he told me it was the best thing he's seen in a long time.
It seems like that band is like hot fire right now.
Oh, totally.
Like I would love to see them play. But yeah.
I'm happy for her. It's great.
But it's interesting to me, and Thurston's, he's doing his thing. He's doing Thurston stuff.
He wrote his book, and
he's everybody's in their book writing phase, which is good. It's good to get all that down.
Yeah.
But I mean, do you ever think about, because it was such a brief time, a brief but momentous time with the Batman Rising, that like, hey, we could do more stuff. I mean, obviously, like Sonic Youth as a band that ain't happening right now. But like the idea of like just getting together with like those folks and making music again, is that something that's you seriously considered?
No, like it wouldn't happen, because if Sonic Youth got back together, they sure as hell wouldn't be asking me to play. But it
wouldn't have to be Sonic Youth. It could be like something totally different, though. Is what I'm saying. That's
if any one of them asked me to do anything, I would.
Yeah.
But,
okay.
People are, everyone's using all these. There's so many better drummers than me, and it's just like what's his name? Brian from the Yeah. He's getting all the good gigs.
Right. Well, yeah. That's what it is.
You see this new group with Malcolmus and
what is it called again? And Matt Sweeney, right?
The Hard Quartet.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Frankly, I thought the last Steve Malcolmus stuff kind of sounded like Jimmy Buffett or or something. So not really to my sensibilities.
I gave up on him a long time ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say peace and love, but it's a far cry, not to my personal sensibilities.
Yeah,
that way. Which.
But I love the way Jim White plays the drums.
Oh, Jim White is like, I'll listen to that dude in anything.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, it's interesting to like that's an interesting grouping of people. So that can be enough.
Yeah.
Sometimes to be like, all right, what does this sound like? How does
this... But I'm always open. If anyone, yeah. I mean, if Lee asked me to do anything, I would. And at the time, I don't want to get into it, but at this current situation, I really can't travel because I have to deal with some things here.
Right.
So, which worked out good because both Lydia and Jon kind of ended around the same time, and then all of a sudden it was good because I wouldn't be able to travel anyway. So.
Yeah, and I mean, and it's no great shakes when you're in your 20s, but as you get older, like it's like there's certain things you just it's harder to do. And again, you talked about the Hitmakers having these like band concentrate, just add water sessions of.
Yeah, that and plus that lugging that metal shit around and like hitting metal with hammers at my age and
now we got to go to a junkyard and get another one. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. That's a whole story in itself. I mean, when I was in Pussy Galore, there was a junkyard in Hoboken, and there had gas tanks piled to the sky, and I would go there and get one for like $10 or something.
Right.
Now I for the Hitmakers, I had to like drive all over the place. A lot of gas tanks are made out of plastic now, or like hard rubber or something, and then you finally find one, and it's like $200 or something. And this fucking smells like gas.
Right. Yeah, the world sort of moved on in that way. In the way it used to be real easy to find cassette players that were exactly. Utilized for musical purposes, and then it's like okay. Then
I still have my Sony Walkman that works, and if I'm rehearsing with someone, I bring it.
Oh, just put it. Yeah, just it's low
it's
tech.
probably easier to record on my phone, but I just like, hey, it's still working.
It's nice to have the physical representation,
right,
of that for sure. I'm fascinated. Speaking of Pussy Galore, I'm fascinated by that Exile. I think it was a cassette, right? If I remember right. That's how. Speaking of cassettes, because that's what made me thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a limited cassette. 550 of them were made. It's been bootlegged a million times.
So that's how I heard it, and of course I heard it, and I was like, "Oh wow!" Like this has been.
It's on YouTube now. You could just listen to it there. I mean.
But my first thought is, this must have been copied too many times. It sounds all like maxed out. Everyone's like, oh no, it's supposed to sound like that.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
It was recorded on speaking of cassette players, it was recorded on a 8-track beat up cassette player.
I love that.
That was the first thing I did with Pussy Galore.
Yeah, and so that's an interesting kind of start.
Well, the story is that towards the end of my time in Sonic Youth, Lee and both of them Lee and Thurston started mouthing off to the British press saying that they were going to cover the White Album, and so the Beatles' White Album, and so we got through back in the USSR in one rehearsal, and I remember, number 9 will be easy. We'll just feed, but that's as far as it went. So, but they put it out there in the universe, and then I joined Pussy Galore, and the first thing Jon says to me, like, well, in response to them saying that, why don't we, I want to record Exile on Main Street, and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a much better record in my opinion, anyway, and so, meanwhile, I don't even think Jon had ever heard it before, and. That was right when Neil Haggerty moved up from New York, from down south, and came to New York, and he was just like this amazing guitar player that, like, he could listen to a track on Exile and just sit there and play it. And so, I think we'd had like maybe a week, maybe less. Like every day, we'd go in and do a handful of songs, and then, and I had a cassette. I still have it somewhere of back then of all the songs just played straight before they like fucked it all up and did all this crazy shit to it.
Oh, interesting.
And it's like I had made a copy of that cassette for Larry Hardy because he's a big Pussy Galore fan, a big Stones fan, and he's been trying to he's been wanting to put out a limited edition of that version with the covers and everything. And
I'd love to hear that. That sounds great.
But yeah, John and Julie just don't want him to do it for some reason.
I mean, I guess there's something to be said for it. I mean, it being having a place in like recorded history of just the brattiest move ever. I mean,
yeah, and it's one way to look at it. It's kind of like like an early Andy Warhol film. It's better to talk about it than to actually sit through it.
right, because it does get a little overwhelming to the ears after a little while. But I think that's. I mean, gosh, like hasn't it been long enough? Like that's that.
Yeah,
people might like it.
And so they made the cassette and they ran it off, and it was really weird too because the cover of Exile with all the collage pictures.
Yeah.
When they made the cassette, if you look, there's actually a little picture of Steve Shelley.
Oh, really?
and which totally weirded him out. He's just like new to this scene.
Yeah.
And new in Sonic Youth. So he was just like he was kind of weirded out about that at the time. He probably doesn't even remember now. But they ran off 550, and John was bringing them up to Caroline Records to distribute, and that's when Keith Wood, the president then at that point of Caroline, called John into his office and signed them, and then we went out and made Right Now after that for Caroline. Yeah.
Nice, and there was that cool the Shove live record too that has that European Sun, I think, that's on there. That's I'm trying to remember. It's a long time. I have all these in my cassette box, by the way, which I have not seen my cassette box in a long time. But
if they did European Sun, that was before my time.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's in the same one that's got. I think it's like it's a bunch of. It might have been from earlier, but it's like this more live stuff. It's like details or.
Corpse Love, is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, and it's like details are for squares. It's like that kind of release, But I think that's like when you think of all of the garage rock revivals that have happened, and I feel like there's been like five or six of them. It's just interesting that like people still kind of go back to that band, and
Pussy Galore.
Yeah, that like it's still like kind of like, oh wow.
Yeah, I mean it's kind of different, than you would like when I think of garage rock bands like that, revivalists. I'm thinking more like the Flesh Tones. They've been around since like 85 or no 75. What am I saying? And they're still going strong, and they do it the best out of a lot of them.
But then most garage rock bands aren't going to do like a Neubauten cover or like a Devo cover or whatever.
Yeah,
like
we did it. We did a Devo cover.
Yeah. Well, I thought that isn't that the same? Aren't those both on?
We did a song called
Penetration of the Centerfold, right?
Right, which was originally for a split Japanese 7-inch with the Black Snakes, Richard Kern's band, and then it actually got put on the reissue of Sugar Shit Show.
Okay, there you go. So coming at too late as per normal. So, but I feel like of all the bands that you've been in, like the ones that have like, done a lot of work, I think Chrome Cranks are probably like most underrated somehow. Like it's kind of hard to say because there's a lot of them, but I feel like Chrome Cranks people, unless they were there, didn't know. It seemed like to me. I don't understand.
Yeah, I think we did better in Europe. We went to Europe a lot. It was kind of weird because I was kind of hesitant to join at the beginning because I thought it was just kind of like too close to Pussy Galore.
Right.
But they were pursuing me, and eventually I joined. And what made me fall in love with the band was Jerry Teal, who had this recording studio called the Funhouse, which where we rehearsed and recorded, and that was really a great place to have to go and work. And
yeah. absolutely. Well, and there, how did you end up meeting those guys? Was that what, just playing together, or what was the?
The very first Chrome Cranks show was opening for Pussy Galore in Cincinnati. Peter Aaron was, he was like the booking guy in Cincinnati, the indie booking guy. Yeah. And he put on shows, like everybody, Nirvana, Mudhoney, all the bands at that period of time. He played in some bands, and then they put together the Chrome Cranks, and they opened for Pussy Galore. And then, I didn't even think anything about it at the time. And then all of a sudden, him and Bill Weber are in New York, and they have, and they're playing in New York, and they were getting a lot of good shows at the beginning. They were opening for the Cramps, and I went to see them open for Mudhoney at Irving Plaza.
Nice.
And I remember after the show, I was talking to Mark Arm, and he goes, like, what do you think of the Chrome Cranks? Don't you think they sound like the Scientists? And I was like, I don't know. I never heard the Scientists. And then I went to the next day and listened to the Scientists. I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
Kind of does. It is like Cincinnati Scientists.
Yeah, and I know they were a big influence on Peter. So
well, it
was weird because at some point we did a tour of the U.S. with Kim Salmon and the Surrealists, and they were opening for us, and it was just like kind of weird. It's like we wouldn't exist without this guy.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of strange?
How that goes?
Yeah. Well. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, and it's. I feel like there's just a lot of solid work in that band. Like I feel like those records are sort of underrated. Like I feel like they were notable in the CD era, especially.
Yeah. I mean, we had Dead Cool on Crypt, and that's a good one. And so then the band fell apart, and then all of a sudden I see this. I didn't talk to Peter for like 15 years. He had moved upstate, and all of a sudden I see this advertisement for this record, Diabolical Boogie, which had like 50 songs on it that I'm all over. I'm like, well, that's, it would have been nice if they mentioned to me that they were putting this record
that was happening. Right, exactly.
So I kind of I wasn't mad about it, because I was glad it was documented. I was glad, and I wasn't going to. So I wrote, Peter, and we kind of buried the hatchet of our beefs with each other, and then we reformed in like 2009, and we went to Europe, and then we recorded another, one last album called something Blood.
Yeah.
Why can't I think of the name?
Yeah. I've got that.
There's no blood in lies. No lies in blood.
Ain't no lies in blood. There we go. That's right. I have that one, but haven't.
That's actually the best sounding Chrome Cranks record, I think.
Oh, it sounds great. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No shade at all there. I feel like there was I saw Chrome Cranks a couple times. I want to say like at Kilowatt, maybe, if I remember correctly, in San Francisco.
We played at the Kilowatt with
Blood Loss?
Blood Loss.
Yeah.
And Speedball Baby.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was those are great shows. That's all I got to say for that. I don't have anything.
I can't believe all the shit I did.
I didn't. I think you played with around that same time period. I think you was there like a Dead Moon thing there too, right?
A what?
Was there a Dead Moon show that was happening around that same time too?
It could have been maybe in Portland. We played a lot of shows with Dead Moon in Europe.
Yeah.
And that was so amazing, because I knew kind of them, but I didn't think they were that big a deal. And then I have all these shows booked with them in Europe, and the first show we're playing with them, we got a flat tire on the way there, so we didn't get to play our set, but we got to the show in time to see them. And I couldn't believe it. There was like 1,000 people. They knew the words to every song. Fred would like break a string and change it without missing a riff.
Yeah.
And They had the most incredible merch stand I've ever seen in my life, with clocks and medallions and all kinds of stuff. And they were the coolest people in the world. And that's around, when I interviewed them with for BBGun. We were in some country, and we had just gone to some place where we saw all these like dead bodies, and so it was perfect. And then anytime I was in the Northwest, we would look them up, and we went to the store he had, and
Yeah, I mean, like they were just so well, and they were influential not just because they made good music, but also because how they chose to do it, how they chose to conduct themselves is just.
Oh, and going back to to the '60s, I mean, he was like getting high with Janis Joplin.
Right, he's like living history as like people.
Yeah. And it's so amazing because there are these two wild people smoking cigarettes, drinking Jack Daniels, and they have a bunch of kids, and their kids are like bankers and Christians.
Yeah. Like totally, I have nothing to do with like the lifestyle at all. Yeah, exactly. It's like that's their way of rebelling.
Yeah. That's what was cool. That documentary that me and Jerry are in for like a half a minute or less. He did a really good job. And the same guy, Jason Summer, just made a new documentary about Stu Spasm.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, but we played with Stu's band in Chicago with Bart Chimp.
Cool.
It was like days after it had premiered, so I'd love to see it.
I would love to see it too. I keep missing it, and I really, really, more than anything, want to see the Red Cross documentary.
I haven't seen that either.
And
I haven't seen anything.
It was playing in Brooklyn, and I bought tickets like 2 months early, and I was all psyched. And then I went to the wrong movie theater and totally screwed up. I was so bummed.
Okay, at least that's fun. So what was playing? Was anything good? What was
no, I didn't even go in because
right.
I was sitting outside and I'm eating, and I'm just like, that's weird. There's this Red Cross movie, and I don't see anybody.
No rock and roll people here at all.
What's going on here? So finally, I go in. And they said, "Oh no, that's the Nighthawk in Prospect Park." You could get there, and I hopped in my car, zipped over there, and if I would have gotten a parking space right away, I would have missed maybe the first 5 or 10 minutes. But there was nowhere to park, and there was no lots. I just said, after a while, I'm like, I don't want to walk into this movie like an hour in, so I just drove.
Right. I mean, at that point, and it's not going to be the kind of thing probably where you could like catch the beginning of it, immediately afterwards or whatever.
Right. Hopefully it'll be easy to see. And I also really want to see the Willie DeVille documentary that they've been showing around forever,
Sure.
but it's still not streaming anywhere.
It's weird how that works. Like some stuff, and especially with like being a thing where people don't go to the movie theater as often.
Yeah. I went to Bowery Electric one night to see the Dream Syndicate documentary, and
cool.
Jason and Steve were there and played, and it was a great night. And but like a week later, it was on Prime.
Yeah.
I thought I was so privileged, like, oh man, I'm gonna get to see this.
And then there's stuff where, like, is that Birthday Party documentary streaming yet? I don't even know if it is.
Yeah, that's
okay.
streaming. Yeah,
that was not for a long time, but they did play at the Milwaukee, like the one of the theater that shows the cool stuff, and I was like, oh, cool! Everybody in the band is here, right on. But it was great. I mean, it was wonderful that finally saw the light of day. But it is weird how that works sometimes, where it's like, okay, like, what are we doing here? Like, do you want people to see this or no? Like, what's happening? But then there's things like, that Edgar Wright Sparks documentary, which that got out and about, and it was great too. It was a great example. It was a good example of like something getting beyond just the nerds that are into that thing out into the world, which is lovely. Last thing, this may be an implanted false memory, but did Chrome Cranks and Geraldine Fibbers tour a little bit together?
We did a tour together, and that was great. And it's where we met Nels Klein and Carla and Lena, their violin player. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. That was like when they put that Butch album out.
Yeah, the stuff Nels was doing on guitar on that record still blows my mind.
Oh.
I mean, stuff he always does blows my mind. Like,
yeah,
but
I'm not a Wilco fan, but other than that, it's.
I've tried so much. I'm like, I feel like this should be something I should like, and I just immediately kind of disassociate. And I'm sorry, it looks good on you, but yeah, I mean, all the Nels Kleinsinger stuff, I love all that,
Yeah, and he's an awesome guy.
And he's just the best. Yeah, this is a unique, interesting guitar player. Yeah, I want to say I maybe saw that tour too. That's why I bring that up. But that was a long time ago,
that was fun.
So, what do you think? So, what do you think going forward, Bob? Like, what do you got going on? What are you gonna do? You keep making these super groups that people are too busy. Got to find some people that aren't so busy.
I know. I mean, I have my practice space here in town that I share with my good friend Mark C. from Live Skull.
Oh yeah.
And so I go down there and I play and I do stuff and little things here and there. I played like the Suicide tribute show. I played the Genesis Peorage tribute show. I played metal percussion on one song with Cynthia Slice singing and everybody else. And I've been doing this Cramps Halloween bash every year, so that'll be coming up. I've been talking with there's this place that opened up called the Two Bridges Luncheonette, and it's really small, and that's where I did 2 of my solo performances. Nice. And the guy there is trying to put together something with me and Richard Etzen playing together, doing something together.
Oh, wow. Wow. What does Richard Etzen even do? Does he even play music anymore? I mean,
he plays music. He did I saw him, he did an improv show. He was in town. He did an improv show with Tim Dahl and Mark Morgan, who I'm playing with now. I did it, we're called BMT. And we just, we played 2 shows so far. And it's total just insane improv, and that's kind of fun.
I was just thinking about what is it, Stranger Than Paradise, the movie that he's in that.
In fact, Esther Balint, who's in that film, she was part of the Suicide tribute. And,
cool! That's awesome. So, I love that. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, those tributes at Bowery Electric are great because I get I could say now I played with so many people. Martin Rev.
Yeah. It's a cross-pollinating event.
Yeah. It's always a gas to play with, to do anything, even just to hang out with Eugene Hoots from Go-Go Bordello. He's a wonderful trip and a half.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Getting back to, you know what? Wasn't there... Okay, so Bewitched, there's the Thick Syrup release. It's got some ostentatious name. What is it? The compilation.
Oh, the worst poetry of
that's right.
1983 to 1993 or something like that.
Yeah.
I put that out myself actually.
I sorry I didn't remember all the details, but I love the. Yeah, that's a good cheeky title for for that band. What was it like putting that together? Because that's like, is it just like everything you recorded?
It was easy to put together. I just went back to Wharton's where I recorded a lot of it, and some of the stuff I just like took off the vinyl and had him
right
juice it up a little or whatever, and putting it together was no problem at all. And then I just wanted to get it out and. I couldn't get anyone to put it out, so I did it myself. And, I don't. Bewitched is a weird thing. I mean, I'm glad I did it, but it wasn't. I don't know. It was interesting. I wanted to actually, after being in other bands, I said, let me be in something where I'm in charge, right. And so. After doing that and dealing with everything and being the front man and writing the song and putting it all together, after it was all said and done, and we went on tour. We opened for Sonic Youth. We did a long tour. We played shows with Jesus Lizard and
sure.
A bunch of bands. Because we had Botch Billions booking it, who, you know, so he had all those.
Oh, of course.
So, you know.
That was the last episode, by the way. Dwayne Dennison was on last week on the show. So,
oh, wow. You know, yeah. So, and then when it was all said and done, afterwards I did the Sub Pop single.
Yeah.
I mean, it started off as an experiment because Thurston had talked to the melody maker or someone, and he made up this story that I had a band called Bewitched with Suzanne Sasek. And so, you know, it started off as just, you know.
Yeah.
And then, you know, we had been offered this show to open for Spaceman 3 at Maxwell. So I put the band together, and then Spaceman 3 couldn't get into the country. So it ended up being with STP, Julie Kafritz's band.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So it was their first show and our first show. And Thurston and Kim and everyone were there. And that's how they booked us to open on the tour, on the Goo tour.
Wow. So that's, boy, it's all
So
connected.
then after that, you know, we
imagine if they'd been able to get in the country.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that still would have been cool, but it would have been
it
different.
would have been cool, but the Sonic Youth show wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But
exactly.
yeah, so and then it went on after that, and I did some singles and split singles, and and then, you know, all this loose stuff I just put together on that compilation, and yeah, that was that. I mean, it was kind of, it was cool, but then like I said, I wanted to be experienced the whole thing about being in charge of everything.
Yeah, how'd you like
getting
that?
songwriting credit? But then when it was all said and done, I was just like, I want to be the drummer. Just call me.
It's a pain.
It's a pain
in the ass, as it turns
yeah,
out, right?
Tell me what time you want me to be there. You know,
Yeah.
I'll be there, and we'll rock.
So you can spend way more time working on all the stuff that isn't music. Sounds great. But do you think, like, is it something where, do you feel like your creativity is best when tied to other people, or does it really matter?
Well, you know, it depends. You know, it's hard to be creative in a band with Jon Spencer because he's
it's just a powerhouse.
He's just so meticulous of every little detail of everything, to the point of ridiculousness sometimes. You know, Retrovirus was great because I knew I was a fan of the songs, and I just played them, put my own spin on them, and no one ever said, you know, Lydia would never say, "Oh, that's not good." Or, you know, it was just, you know, and you know, it was funny because I was thinking of, speaking of that, I was like, the other night after the show, me and Jim Thurwell were talking to Buzz about how great Trevor Dunn is playing the bass.
Oh yeah.
And then Buzz was like, "Yeah, he's amazing." And it's really horrible, you know, when he's working with Mike Patton, because Mike Patton's micromanaging every move, like, "Oh, use the bow over here and use this." And it's just like, you get someone because you like what they do, and you let them do what they do, you know?
Yeah, just let them do the thing that it is that they do. It
Exactly.
makes them, yeah.
So as far as creativity go, definitely Bewitched and the solo stuff, you know, that's me at my creative. But even, you know, Sonic Youth too. I did whatever I want. And the great thing about Sonic Youth, and Thurston seems to stress that in his book, is that it was, you can't really call it a complete democracy because he kind of ran the band, but songwriting credits were all split 4 ways,
right?
You know, through the whole band. And that's the only band I've ever been in that did that. You know, it's just kind of like,
there's not a lot of examples. There's like Sloan and REM, I think.
Yeah, you know, yeah, there's some bands, but it's just like, you know, like I think of, like, you know, like Jon Spencer getting all the songwriter credit, and then you listen to a song like Dick Johnson, and if Neil didn't have that guitar riff,
forget
that's
it. What
the
is
whole
it?
song.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
yeah. Yeah, well, and historically speaking, songwriting and songwriting credits have generally not been too kind to the drummer either.
Oh no,
I mean,
that's a long time story, and you know, I mean, that was the big the big problem with the Go-Go's.
That's
it's
yes,
just like
that is a
it's like
documentary I
Charlotte
did
and
see.
Linda were buying houses, and Gina was,
Gina. Yeah, I did see that one. Yeah, that was a drag. I was like, oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
It's such a bummer to see that. No, but it's I would love to see Wolfmanhattan Project do more stuff. Like I think that's a really cool.
Yeah, I would too, and I hope it
people.
does, because that's totally creative, and that's a three-way split, and that's just all three of us putting our own spin on whatever we do. Half the stuff was done in the studio, and the few gigs we played went over really well, and it was fun. And speaking of it, reminds me of that joke. It's just like, what was the last thing the drummer said before he was fired from the band? I wrote a song.
Hey guys, I got a song. I'd like it here. Too real. Well, what's it going to take? A public pressure campaign to get this book back in print? People want to see it. People want to read it.
I every once in a while I write Todd, and he totally agrees. He's just, I don't know, but it's just like
he agrees. He just one
day he just has to decide he's going to do it.
Yeah,
and then we got to get together, put some more stuff in there, and then of course the every time he reprints it, there's like 15 names to add to the memorial.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the thing. Think about it. Yeah, my book. It's just like, I mentioned that earlier. Like all the people that are in there that are gone.
Last time we talked, you were going to have to come on the 10-year anniversary episode. That is, if it isn't Steve Albini's last interview, it's one of them. Like I had him on that show, and then a week and a half later, he was gone.
That probably was his last interview.
It's crazy to me, and it makes that kind of documentation all the more important. Especially
that was shocking, and so was I was good friends with Dallas Good of the Sadies, and that was another one. It's just like he was like 47 or something,
I know,
and he just like they found out much later on that it was COVID related, but what a shock.
There's I should be careful what I say, but there's a few people that passed away that it's sort of like, it kind of seems like that might have been COVID, but people don't want to say that or something. Okay, fine, like whatever. we can talk about that off air. But Bob, this is fantastic. I love talking to you. We could
Thank
do
you.
this.
Appreciate it.
We could do this all night and into the next one. I want that book to be back in print. Maybe you can come back again for that.
Yeah, totally. I've also been another thing I've been doing is I've been taking a lot of my photos from the past that are in the book, and in fact, it's right behind me.
Yeah, that's right. Beautiful stuff. Yeah.
There's one of Warhol that I took. You can't see it; it's got glare on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, hey, where'd you go?
Oh, I just put you on a no. That was me. I was trying to get the picture better
so
on the screen,
I've been blowing up a lot of photos from the past, and I want to have a photo show.
Oh, you should totally do that, because all the stuff from the zine was great, And
So I got so many, I was taking pictures in the 70s, and I have a good picture of Warhol. I got a picture. I took of Lou Reed and Debbie Harry and all these people from back then, and I want to have a photo show. And there's this new club that opened up in Hoboken. It's a real small place. It's run by Jim Mastro, who owns the guitar bar. He was a guitar player for Ian Hunter.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And he was originally known for being in the Bongos, and he started off as a teenager playing in Richard Lloyd's. He's on Richard Lloyd's first solo record, and he has
that's where I know the name from. Okay.
Yeah, he's got a guitar store in Hoboken, and he opened up this little place. Oh God, why can't I think of the name of it?
Dang, I was driving through Jersey literally 2 days ago.
Yeah, it's it's only open on special nights, but he's been having these great little shows there, and like art shows and painting shows.
That's
so
awesome.
Like I saw Ivan Julian play acoustic there.
Oh, cool.
Richard Lloyd's playing there.
Yeah.
I saw Vicky Peterson and her husband John Calsil play. It was a lot of fun.
I would let you know. I have not played Jersey since Maxwell's closed.
Well, not many people have because there's nowhere else to play in Hoboken.
I was gonna say I didn't realize there was any place to
But
play.
we got White Eagle Hall over in Jersey City now, which is great because it's booked by Todd Abramson, who booked Maxwell's. So every time there's a show there, I never have to pay to get in. And I saw a lot of shows there. I saw Spiritualized and L7 with the Death Valley Girls, Brian Jonestown Massacre,
Nice.
The Lemon Twigs.
Oh wow!
Cross,
Yeah, that's great.
So, and that's a Uber away. So
Right.
that's my new favorite place.
I was gonna say it seems like it's wouldn't it's different city, but not
Different city, and it's a bigger place. It's kind of like
Yeah.
Bowery Ballroom size or whatever. But
Right.
so they could have the DBs are playing there on Sunday.
Oh, cool. That's
Yeah.
awesome. No, I meant to ask you about the photograph stuff because I think that's a really good idea. I know. Well, speaking of L7, Jen Finch, she did a photo show and a photo book not that long ago, and super cool stuff. I know Lori Barbera was been going over photos for years and keeps needing to do something with them, and that's another thing about being in all these moments of history. If you pre-cell phone age, documentation can be kind of scarce sometimes, and that's a lovely thing to be able to share. So,
yeah,
Bob, this is great. It's
okay.
far too long since I had you on. Sorry about that, but thank you so much for being so generous with your time and coming back on. Last thing, only canned question I ever ask the guests, so you can interpret it however you like. But why do you do what you do?
What do you mean? Eat, sleep? Why I do what I
however
do?
you like, my friend. Yeah.
I don't know. I just I grew up, in the 60s going into the 70s. And when I was in high school, my idol was Andy Warhol. I ended up becoming a silkscreen printer and doing his artwork later on in the 80s. But I just had that thing. I just wanted to be creative. And thank God I kind of fell into music accidentally because I had played when I was a little kid. I took drum lessons for a year when I was 12, when I, after the Beatles were on the Ed Sullivan Show. And, but then I never even thought about it, and I started going to all these concerts from early on. And then once I discovered, at the age of 20, CBGB's I was going there 4 times a week. And it never even dawned on me until maybe the no wave days that because I was, I never thought of myself as very skilled, but once the no wave kind of thing came along, I realized that you didn't have to be so technically advanced to create something cool. And that's kind of when I got into it. And I was just very lucky that I knew who Sonic Youth were right when they started, and and I jumped on it. And why I do what I do, because it fucking beats working 9 to 5. not that it's ever really paid my bills, but it's I'm so grateful. I've traveled the world so many times, and didn't have to pay for it, and then I'm very grateful for my life, and I'm glad I'm still healthy.
Absolutely. I'm glad of that too. And I'm so glad you spent some time with me. And thank you so much. And until
All right,
next
Conan.
time.
Thank you. Take care.
Brother, you too. There he goes. Bye, Bert. Bye, Bert. Let's hear. You know what I'm going to play, right? Well, Death Valley 69 for you.
Is this thing on?
Feature Mr. Bob Bert. Also Lydia Lunch. Lydia Lunch is on that song. That was great. I can't believe it took me that long to have Bob Bert back, and I can't believe I've missed 2 pressings of that book. I'm usually so on it. I don't know what the problem is. I'm sorry. I don't know what to say. I have no words. Except for these ones. The name of the show is Conan Neutron's Protonic Reversal. Thank you so very much for listening to it. This show airs Thursdays, usually 8 Eastern, 7 Central, 6 Mountain, 5 Pacific. Streaming live on YouTube and Twitch, podcasted later everywhere. No ads, no sponsors, no kidding. ProtonicReversal.com for those archives. Get it wherever you get your podcasts. But if you like the show and you want to get episodes sooner, $1 a month at patreon.com/ProtonicReversal will help support the show, which is appreciated, and get you those episodes sooner. So if you get something out of the show, consider doing that. Thank you for liking the shows and sharing them around your platform of choice, subscribing. All that helps people discover the show. It's just a darn nice thing to do. It's deeply appreciated. Let's see, Conan Neutron, the Secret Friends, San Francisco, San Pedro, San Diego, San Tempe, coming up in 2 weeks. No episode next week, but episode 400 is coming up soon. It's going to be cool. Trust me, I know what I'm doing. And I'll be announcing some other stuff coming up as well. So, thanks for sticking with it as always. And, I appreciate it. Anything else?
This microphone
I think so. Stay safe out there.
into electricity.
And check you later.
Now, out on Route 128, you're dark and lonely. You got my radio on. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Welcome to my top 10. I'd like to thank our sponsor. But we haven't got a sponsor. Not if you were the last man on Earth. She was prepared to prove it. This one goes out to a special girl. But there is no special girl. It's the end of radio. The last announcer plays the last record. The last what? Leaves the transmitter. Circles the globe in search of a listener. Can you hear me now? Can it really broadcasting if there's no one there to receive? It's the end of radio. As we come to the close of our broadcast day, got my radio on. Can you hear me now? This is a test! If this had been a real emergency, hey, hey!